Alright, Matt from the past here. It is time for the Trivia Minute, and here we go. The Great Chicago Fire was a conflagration that burned in the American city of Chicago, Illinois during October 8th through October 10th, 1871. The fire killed approximately 300 people, destroying roughly 3.3 square miles of the city, including over 17,000 structures, and left more than 100,000 residents homeless. The fire began in a neighborhood southwest of the city center. A long period of hot, dry, windy conditions and the wooden construction prevalent in the city led to the conflagration spreading quickly. The fire leapt the south branch of the Chicago River and destroyed much of central Chicago, and then crossed the main stem of the river, consuming the near north side. Help flowed to the city from near and far after the fire. The city government improved building codes to stop the rapid spread of future fires and rebuilt rapidly to those higher standards. A donation from the United Kingdom spurred the establishment of the Chicago Public Library. According to Nancy Connolly, Mrs. O'Leary's great-great-granddaughter, the fire is said to have started at about 8:30 p.m. on October 8th in or around a small barn belonging to the O'Leary family that bordered the alley behind 137 West DeKalb Street when Peglin Sullivan accidentally knocked over a lantern while looking for beer for a party. The shed next to the barn was the first building to be consumed by the fire. City officials never determined the cause of the blaze, but the rapid spread of the fire due to a long drought in the year's summer, strong winds from the southwest, and the rapid destruction of the water pumping system explains the extensive damage of the mainly wooden city structures. There has been much speculation over the years on a single start to the fire. The most popular tale blames Mrs. O'Leary's cow, which allegedly knocked over a lantern. Others state that a group of men were gambling inside the barn and knocked over a lantern. Still, other speculation suggests that the blaze was related to other fires in the Midwest late that day. The fire's spread was aided by the city's use of wood as the predominant building material in a style called balloon frame. More than 2/3 of the structures in Chicago at the time of the fire were made entirely of wood, and most of the houses and buildings being topped with highly combustible tar or shingle roofs. All of the city's sidewalks and many roads were also made of wood. Compounding this problem, Chicago received only 1 inch of rain from July 4th to October 9th, causing severe drought conditions before the fire, while strong southwest winds helped to carry flying embers towards the heart of the city. In 1871, the Chicago Fire Department had 185 firefighters with just 17 horse-drawn steam pumpers to protect the entire city. The initial response by the fire department was timely, but due to an error by the watchman Matthias Schaefer, the firefighters were initially sent to the wrong place, allowing the fire to grow unchecked. An alarm sent from the area near the fire also failed to register at the courthouse where the fire watchmen were, while the firefighters were tired from having fought numerous small fires and one large fire in the week before. These factors combined to turn a small barn fire into a conflagration. When the firefighters finally arrived at DeKalb Street, The fire had grown and spread to neighboring buildings and was progressing towards the central business district. Firefighters had hoped that the south branch of the Chicago River and an area that had previously thoroughly burned would act as a natural fire break. All along the river, however, were lumber yards, warehouses, and coal yards, as well as barges and numerous bridges across the river. As the fire grew, the southwest wind intensified and the temperatures rose, causing structures to catch fire from the heat and from burning debris blown by the wind. Around midnight, flaming debris blew across the river and landed on roofs and the South Side Gasworks. With the fire across the river and moving rapidly towards the heart of the city, panic set in. About this time, Mayor Roswell B. Mason sent messages to nearby towns asking for help. When the courthouse caught fire, he ordered the building to be evacuated and the prisoners jailed in the basement to be released. At 2:30 a.m. on the 9th, the cupola of the courthouse collapsed, sending the great bell crashing down. Some witnesses reported hearing the sound from a mile away. As more buildings succumbed to the flames, a major contributing factor to the fire spread was a meteorological phenomenon known as a fire whirl. As hot air rises, it comes into contact with cooler air and begins to spin, creating a tornado-like effect. These fire whirls are likely what drove flaming debris so high and so far. Such debris was blown across the main branch of the Chicago River to a railroad car carrying kerosene. The fire had jumped the river a second time and was now raging across the city's north side. Despite the fire spreading and growing rapidly, the city's firefighters continued to battle the blaze. A short time after the fire jumped the river, a burning piece of timber lodged on the roof of the city's waterworks. Within minutes, the interior of the building was engulfed in flames and the building was destroyed. With it, the city's water mains went dry and the city was helpless. The fire burned unchecked from building to building, block to block. Late in the evening of October 9th, it started to rain, but the fire had already started to burn itself out. The fire had spread to the sparsely populated area of the north side, having thoroughly consumed the densely populated areas. Once the fire had ended, the smoldering remains were still too hot for a survey of the damage to be completed for many days. Eventually, the city determined that the fire destroyed an area of about 4 miles long and averaging 3/4 of a mile wide, encompassing an area of more than 2,000 acres, destroying more than 73 miles of roads, 120 miles of sidewalks, 2,000 lampposts, 17,500 buildings, and $222 million in property, which was about a third of the city's valuation at the time in 1871. On October 11, 1871, General Philip H. Sheridan came quickly to the aid of the city and was placed in charge by a proclamation given by Mayor Roswell B. Mason. The preservation of good order and peace of the city is hereby entrusted to Lieutenant General P.H. Sherman, U.S. Army. To protect the city from looting and violence, the city was put under martial law for 2 weeks under General Sherman's command. Structures with a mix of regular structure. The command structure was one of regular troops, militia units, police, and a specially organized civilian group, 1st Regiment of the Chicago Volunteers. Former Lieutenant General William Bross, and part owner of the Tribune, later recalled his response to the arrival of General Sheridan and his soldiers. Never did deeper emotions of joy overcome me. Thank God those most dear to me and the city as well are safe. For 2 weeks, Sheridan's men patrolled the streets, guarding the relief warehouses and enforcing other regulations. On October 24th, the troops were relieved of their duties and the volunteers were mustered out of service. Of the approximately 324,000 inhabitants of Chicago in 1871, 90,000 residents, about 28% of the population, were left homeless. 120 bodies were recovered, but the death toll may have been as high as 300. The county coroner speculated that an accurate count was impossible, as some victims may have drowned or have been incinerated, leaving no remains. In the days and weeks following the fire, monetary donations flowed into Chicago from around the country and abroad, along with donations of food, clothing, and other goods. These donations came from individuals, corporations, and cities. New York City gave $450,000 along with clothing and provisions. St. Louis gave $300,000, and the Common Council of London gave 1,000 guineas as well as 7,000 pounds from private donations. In Greenock, Scotland, population 40,000, a town meeting raised £518 on the spot. Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Buffalo, all commercial rivals, donated hundreds and thousands of dollars. Milwaukee, along with other nearby cities, helped by sending firefighting equipment, food, clothing, and books were brought by train from all over the continent. Mayor Mason placed the Chicago Relief and Aid Society in charge of the city's relief efforts. Operating from the First Congregational Church, city officials and aldermen began taking steps to preserve order in Chicago. Price gouging was a key concern, and in one ordinance the city set the price of bread at 8 cents for a 12-ounce loaf. Public buildings were opened as places of refuge. Saloons closed at 9 in the evening for the week following the fire. Many people who were left homeless after the incident were never able to get their normal lives back, since all their personal papers and belongings burned in the conflagration. After the fire, A.H. Burgess of London proposed the English book donation to spur a free library in Chicago. In their sympathy with Chicago over the damage suffered, libraries in Chicago have been private with membership fees. In April 1872, the City Council passed an ordinance to establish the free Chicago Public Library, starting with the donation from the United Kingdom of more than 8,000 volumes. The fire also led to questions about the development in the United States. Due to Chicago's rapid expansion at the time, the fire led to Americans reflecting on industrialization based on a religious point of view. Some said that Americans should return to a more old-fashioned way of life, and that the fire was caused by people ignoring traditional morality. On the other hand, others believed that a lesson to be learned from the fire was that cities needed to improve their building techniques. Frederick Law Olmsted observed that poor building practices in Chicago were a problem. Chicago had a weakness for big things and liked to think that it was outbuilding New York. It did a great deal of commercial advertising in its housetops. The thought of construction as well as of art in its great showy buildings must have been numerous. The walls were thin and were overweighted with gross and coarse misornamentation. Olmsted also believed that brick walls and disciplined firemen and police, the deaths and damage caused with that also believed that with brick walls and disciplined firemen and police, the deaths and damage caused would have been much less. Almost immediately, the city began to rewrite its fire standards, spurred by the efforts of leading insurance executives and fire prevention reformers such as Arthur C. Ducat. Chicago soon developed one of the country's leading firefighting forces. Business owners and land speculators such as Gordon Stall Hubbard quickly set about rebuilding the city. The first load of lumber for rebuilding was delivered the day the last burning building was extinguished. The World's Columbian Expedition 22 years later, Chicago hosted more than 21 million visitors. The Palmer House Hotel burned to the ground in the fire 13 days after its grand opening. Its developer, Potter Palmer, secured a loan and rebuilt the hotel to higher standards across the street from the original, proclaiming the world's first fireproof building. In 1956, the remaining structures of the original O'Leary property at 558 West DeKoven Street were torn down for construction of the Chicago Fire Academy, a training facility for firefighters known as the Quinn Fire Academy or Chicago Fire Department Training Facility. A bronze structure of stylized flame entitled Pillar of Fire by Egon Wiener was erected on the point of origin in 1961. The following structures from the burned district are still standing: St. Michael's Church Old Town, Chicago Water Tower, Chicago Avenue Pumping Station, Chicago Constable Bellinger's Cottage at 21 Lincoln Place, 2121 North Hudson today, 2323 and 2339 North Cleveland Avenue also survived the blaze. St. Michael's Church and the pumping station were both gutted in the fire, but their exteriors survived and the buildings were rebuilt using the surviving walls. Additionally, though the inhabitable portions of the building were destroyed, the bell tower of St. James Cathedral survived the fire and was incorporated into the rebuilt church. The stones near the top of the tower are still blackened from the soot and smoke. Almost from the moment the fire broke out, various theories about its cause began to circulate. The most popular and endearing legend remains that the fire began in the O'Leary barn as Mrs. O'Leary was milking her cow. The cow kicked over a lantern, or an oil lamp in some versions, setting fire to the barn. The O'Leary family denies this, stating that they were in bed before the fire started, but stories of the cow began to spread across the city. Catherine O'Leary seemed the perfect scapegoat. She was a poor Irish Catholic immigrant, and during the latter half of the 19th century, anti-Irish sentiment was strong in Chicago and throughout the United States. This was intensified as a result of the growing political power of the city's Irish population. Furthermore, the United States have been distrustful of Catholics, or Papists as they were often called, since its beginning, carrying over attitudes in England in the 17th century. As an Irish Catholic, Mrs. O'Leary was a target of both anti-Catholic and anti-Irish sentiment. The story was circulating in Chicago even before the flames had died out, and it was noted that the Chicago Tribune it was noted in the Chicago Tribune's first post-fire issue. In the 1893, the reporter Michael Ahern retracted the cow and lantern story, admitting that it was fabricated. But even his confession was unable to put the legend to rest. Although the O'Learys were never officially charged with starting the fire, the story became so ingrained in local lore that the Chicago City Council officially exonerated them and the cow in 1997. Amateur historian Richard Bales has suggested the fire started when Daniel Pegleg Sullivan, who first reported fire, ignited hay in the barn while trying to steal milk. Part of Bales' evidence includes an account by Sullivan, who claimed in an inquiry before the fire department of Chicago on November 23, 5th, 1871, that he saw the fire coming through the side of the barn and ran across the Coven Street to free the animals from the barn, one of which included a cow owned by Sullivan's mother. Bale's account does not have consensus. The Chicago Public Library staff criticized his account in their webpage on the fire. Despite this, the Chicago City Council was convinced of Bale's argument and stated that the actions of Sullivan on that day should be scrutinized after the O'Leary family was exonerated in 1997. Anthony DiBartolo reported evidence in two articles of the Chicago Tribune, October 8, 1997 and March 3, 1998, reprinted in Hyde Park Media, suggesting that Lewis M. Cohen may have started the fire during a craps game. Following his death in 1942, Cohen bequeathed $35,000, which was assigned by his executors to the Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern University. The bequest was given to the school on September 28, 1944, and the dedication contained a claim by Cohen to have been present at the start of the fire. According to Cohen, on the night of the fire, he was gambling in the O'Leary's barn with one of their sons and some of their neighborhood boys. When Mrs. O'Leary came out to the barn to chase the gamblers away around 9, they knocked over a lantern in their flight, although Cohen states that he paused long enough to scoop up money. The argument is not universally accepted. An alternative theory, first suggested in 1882 by Ignatius L. Donnelly in Ragnarok, The Age of Fire and Gravel, the fire was caused by a meteor shower. This was described as a fringe theory concerning Belize Comet at a 2004 conference at the Aerospace Corporation and the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. Engineer and physicist Robert Wood suggested that the fire began from a fragment of Belize Comet impacted the Midwest. Belize Comet had broken apart in 1845 and had not been observed since. Wood ignored that 4 large fires took place all on the same day, all on the shores of Lake Michigan, suggesting a common root cause. Eyewitness reports suggested spontaneous ignitions, lack of smoke, balls of fire falling from the sky, and blue flames. According to Wood, these accounts suggest that the fires were caused by the methane that is commonly found in comets. Meteorites are not known to start or spread fires and are cool to the touch after reaching the ground, so this theory has not found favor in the scientific community. Methane air mixtures become flammable only when methane concentrations exceeds 5%, at which point the mixture also becomes explosive, a situation unlikely to occur from meteorites. Methane gas is lighter than air and thus does not accumulate near the ground. Any localized pockets of methane in the open air rapidly dissipate. Moreover, if a fragment of an icy comet were to strike Earth, the most likely outcome, due to the low temperature tensile strength of such bodies, would be for it to disintegrate in the upper atmosphere, leading to a meteor airburst like the Tunguska event. The specific choice of Belize Comet does not match with the dates in question, as the 6-year period of the comet's orbit did not intersect that of the Earth until 1872, 1 full year after the fire, when a large meteor shower was observed. The common cause for the fire in the Midwest in 1871 is that the area had had a dry summer, so that winds from the front that moved in the evening were capable of generating rapidly expanding blazes from available ignition sources, which were plentiful in the region. And that was the Trivia Minute, and now let's get back to the shows.
you